Hello, everybody, and welcome to Customer Value and Beyond. I'm Steven Lewandowski, and I'm honored to have you with us today. We bring you insights from decades in tech, B2B SaaS, and customer success, sharing real stories, answering your burning questions, and exploring new ways to drive customer value without taking ourselves hopefully too seriously. This show is live streamed on LinkedIn and YouTube, and we will make recordings available afterwards via Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well. And you can, of course, also still access the LinkedIn live event. With us today, I mean myself and Maria. So I'm very honored to have Maria Bondarenko, who joined the Addressable Value team recently with us as well. So happy to do this with you today, Maria.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be here.
Pleasure to have you with us. So we are sending live from Berlin, but today we have someone very special with us. So enough about us for now, but today I'm excited to introduce to you Mikael Blaisdell. Mikael, as many of you know who's have looked deep into the customer success industry and learned a lot, probably found his humongous customer success community that he's built on LinkedIn with, I think, 65,000 members. So Mikael will, of course, make sure that we get the exact numbers. He's founder and executive director of the Customer Success Association. He's been researching, defining, and architecting the customer success profession since the inception of that subscription model in 2006. Mikael, it's a pleasure to have you with us. And why don't you take a minute or as long as you like to tell the world about your impressive background and the community you built. So great to have you with us.
I'm very glad to be here. Thank you, Steven, for asking me. And Maria, I'm looking forward to this a lot. As Steven mentioned, yes, I did found the Customer Success Forum on LinkedIn back in 2009. We had 350 members then. We now have almost 66,000. It'll cross 66 any day now. It's been interesting to watch the growth. And one of the advantages, of course, of being on LinkedIn was that because it's LinkedIn, anytime someone joins the forum, they have to tell me who they are, where they are, and who they work for. So I was able to watch the spread of customer success from mostly just a SaaS thing to into all kinds of other industries, finance, fleet management, healthcare. And I think the core of it is that with any powerful technological product, there's an investment in learning that the user has to make in order to get the benefits of it. So any complex product is a candidate for customer success, especially when you move to the subscription model. So, we have a built-in market and it keeps on growing. And it was interesting to watch how it grew over the years. I founded the Customer Success Association in 2012. I'd been doing local meetings in the San Francisco Bay Area. And between that and the forum, I noticed that everybody was asking the same questions. Unfortunately, they still are. So the challenge hasn't gone away, but it's been a fascinating ride.
And I think this is also how we met, right? So I remember being in London for your, customer success, Unplugged events?
It was Customer Success Con. And
yes.
It was Unplugged, which, absolutely no PowerPoint. And it was designed to maximize networking because the value in just about any professional conference when you go to it is not necessarily in the presentations. It's in those quiet conversations that happen in line at the lunch counter or standing around the bar afterwards. When somebody asks you a question and you get an answer that you hadn't expected, that pays for the whole thing. So I built Customer Success Con to maximize that. And that was, unfortunately, the pandemic put me out of business for that. But I loved my trips going around and meeting everybody because the essential message is you're not alone. Everybody else is facing the same challenges.
Definitely. It sounds like you have been drinking a pint with each and every customer success folk. And knowing that, and also based on your experience and your expertise, compared to with 2009, what has changed the most within the customer success field?
Well, when I first started it out, I mean, around 2000, somewhere in there was a Dreamforce conference in San Francisco, and it may have been a couple of years later. But Jim Eberlin, who founded JBara Systems that later became Gainsight, so was standing in a booth and he said, "What is customer success?" And I said, "Oh, that's easy. We make more money better, faster for our customers and our companies, and we can prove it." And it's changed over, but that is the essential thing. It's make your customer more profitable, make your company more profitable. And what's changed over time is I remember in 2016 at the San Francisco Customer Success Con, I had 3 major players in the customer success space. There was a president of one of the vendors, there was one of the consultants, and there was somebody else that was very high up organizationally. So during a plenary, I put the question to them. I said, should customer success own revenue? And all 3 of them looked back to me and said, absolutely not. Well, my research at that point was showing about 20% of customer success executives already owned revenue. And within 3 years, by 2019, that figure went over 90%. So one of the biggest changes has been that customer success is now recognized as a revenue producer, as a profitability engine. And of course, there's always been people that say, "Oh, no, we can't do that. We can't destroy our relationship with the customers." Well, I could have a rude comment to that, but basically nonsense.
Yes, please.
I mean, after all, if you sit down with a client or a customer and you say, "Hey, here's the deal. Over the next 12 months, you and I working together are going to increase your profitability by 50%. And I'm going to take 5% of that for my fee." Now, who would turn down a deal like that? You're going to make me lots of money and you want a piece of it for yourself? Oh, shucky darn. How terrible.
Very true. And I think we now found out a bit about your background, and I think you've built something truly amazing there, right? And I know the LinkedIn group and your community is still going strong, and you will probably share with us later also the great content and also basically like yellow books for customer success professionals, others people can find on your website. Yeah. But aside from the customer success profession, right? Aside from you building the business and educating the industry, what is maybe some, and we used to do this in the beginning as a bit of an icebreaker, right? So what is maybe not something we can find on your LinkedIn profile where people would say, okay, I've known Mikael now for, I don't know, 16 years, right? Learning from him about customer success. What else keeps him up at night and what else keeps him busy?
Oh, well, I'm a guitar player for one. And the other, I get involved with nonprofits. I was on the board of a lighthouse in the strait between San Francisco and San Pablo Bays for a number of years. And when I moved up here, I'm about 150 miles north of San Francisco on the coast. There's a lighthouse up here too. And I wandered down one day and happened to mention that I'd been on the board at this other lighthouse. The next thing I knew, I was on the board of this one. So it's been kind of fun.
Nice, super interesting.
That sounds amazing. And talking about playing guitar, what kind of music do you enjoy playing the most?
Oh, it ranges, from light jazz to folk to 70s and 80s music.
That sounds amazing. I think that's the playing music instruments is the thing that brings us 3 of us together. Because as far as I remember, Steven plays sax, right?
Yeah, for over a decade, but I somehow lost that over the years.
Well, I did too. I stopped playing for a while. My guitar was just sitting on its stand in the corner of my office until I got tired of looking at it, and I put it back in its case and put it in the closet. But when I moved up here, I met some friends, and one of them asked me, came out that I was a guitar player. But I said, but I haven't played for a number of years. And they said, oh, well, we have a local strum club that gets together to play. So I joined that, and that's been a religion. Every Monday and Wednesday afternoon, I'm going this evening, and it's
amazing.
got me back in practice.
Very cool.
That's also like once you have this kind of an external commitment, then you're always on top of that. And actually, talking about the jazz and also like talking about the music itself, you have briefly described previously that sales, customer success, as well as product, it's like a jazz band. Everyone has a different instrument, and they are supposed to create the same piece of music. And what do you think those three functions still struggle the most? Why they're still struggling to play all together?
Well, when I play in a small musical group, you've got a singer or two singers, lead and some harmonies. You've got a bass player or a sax player, keyboards, drums. In order for those to work together, they all have to know what each other is good for. You have to understand how the sax lead slides in and where it can take you. So, if I'm playing rhythm guitar, I want to serve as a bass for that sax lead. And when the lead is over, you want to introduce the lead. So you mute, you kind of downplay for just a bit to emphasize that a lead is coming in. And then the lead person, when they finish their lead, fades back into the background and the foundation of the music, and somebody else steps forward to take it. But in order to do that, you have to know the capabilities of all those other people and their instruments. You have to know how it fits in. And you have to keep your mind on what the audience wants to hear. So if the audience is going nuts over a lead guitar player, for example, hey, you keep repeating that verse and let that lead go on for as long as they want because the audience is loving it. So
are you talking about customers who are going nuts for sales promises?
Well, you can get into that, all right, which is another place where customer success can really have an offer, because they know what their customers are doing with the product. So when sales comes in and says, "Hey, I got this great deal. If only we put this additional feature into the product, we're going to get this humongous deal." Customer success can go, "Yeah, right. No, we're not going to do that. This doesn't fit our ideal customer profile. This is not in our best interest." And the answer is no. Because one of the things I've long advocated is the senior customer success executive should have veto authority over new product features, over the sales pipeline, and over the marketing program, so that you don't bring in the wrong kind of leads.
Absolutely. And I think different kind of teams have different kind of responsibilities, right? You mentioned now sales also, or marketing with bringing in leads, right, and how they are worked. But even in the existing customer base, right? I think I remember you noting also at some point that customer support basically tells you how a product works, right? And customer success advises you on how it's used for increased profitability and productivity. And you repeated a bit of that earlier as well. And when sitting down with a CFO versus a CS leader, where would you think the definition of value differs, right? So where would you think they speak the same language, or are they looking at two different kind of currencies of success?
Well, the CFO is looking at numbers. They speak what I call the language of profitability. They want to know, what are our costs to serve? What's the cost to produce? What's the revenue stream? What's the reliability of the revenue stream? What's our profit margin? Because the CFO is going to go before the board and say, this is where the company is, this is where we're going. And he or she has to have accurate, reliable numbers. Customer success hasn't had those numbers. And then one of the problems is that lack of the solid numbers. All too often the customer success people want to talk about what I call process metrics. We've done so many QBRs. We've done, I hate that term, but so many, meetings with the customers. We've tracked these dashboards. We've done these communication programs, all the stuff, the doingness. And the CFO wants to, yeah, but what's that worth? How does a customer value review done properly directly impact retention and therefore the income stream? And if you don't have the answers for that, you've got a problem. I mean, years ago, I was doing one of the local meetings, and the woman who was presenting, she was the vice president of customer success at a firm. She was saying, well, every week I sit down with the vice president of sales, and we review the deals in the sales pipeline to see which ones we're going to go forward with. And the room got deadly silent. And she said, did I say something wrong? And I said, are you telling me you have veto authority over the sales pipeline? And she says, yes, you couldn't do this job without it. But you have to have the data. You have to be able to show exactly why, with numbers, why this particular prospect doesn't fit our model. And the same is true talking to the CFO. You've got to be able to talk about the activities of your group and make a direct connection to revenue and profitability with them. We'll get into this in a number with, like, what are we going to have AI do? Well, what can we trust AI to do? And how are we monitoring it? And what makes sense? If it's simple answers, sure, let the AI take that. If it's complex stuff where you need a human connection, no AI is going to do that. But you have to be able to say, this is why we need a human connection at that point in our interaction with the customer.
And I think you mentioned something super interesting, right? So because I think these internal process metrics, right, are something which is still something that is very, very, very much seen in customer success teams today, right? Where there's a lot of views on how many features are leveraged, what's the NPS like, how many QBRs, EBRs, whatever you call it, are booked, right? So these are very operational internal metrics, which you can maybe put on, I don't know, a team lead dashboard, right? Where it's about managing your team and tracking that somehow. Whether that makes sense, we can discuss probably at another point, but that's usually what you look at, right? And the customer value topic that we're trying to focus on is usually the one which, funnily enough, was back in the founding area where you were also part of, the foundational idea behind customer success. And I have the feeling that today we're trying to get customer success back to where it originally was supposed to be. And instead of kind of measuring and fixing the holes in my bucket and trying to kind of fix and put strips on everything that doesn't work, we're getting back to that proactive management, value identification, value realization. And I think that's what's kind of so beneficial. And to your probably praise as well, I think that's what many companies also in the US do much better than they do in Europe, because what you mentioned initially, this 90% revenue ownership in companies, I wouldn't think that in Germany we're at that point. I would say it's probably between, 60 and 70%, where customer success teams actually own the revenue number.
Well, yeah, going back to what I said to Jim Eberlin, we make more money better, faster for our customers and our companies, and we can prove it. Yes, back in the early days, it's you were watching what your customer did, at least I hope you were, to determine, are they being successful? Are they making money? And you would go and talk to them, in whatever format and at whatever, intervals you did, but to ask, how are you doing? What can we do to make it better? What can we do to make it easier for you? Years and years ago, when I was just starting out my career as in business, this old enterprise salesman looks at me and he says, kid, if you can't go into a machine shop and put on a hard hat and a set of coveralls, go out on the shop floor and speak fluent machine shop, that owner is not going to trust you. It's still true today. If somebody calls me and says, okay, how do I make best use of this piece of technology in a customer success operation? I can tell them because I speak their language. And I say, okay, you're wasting your time with this. You need to focus on that. It's all about producing value for the customer. How does that piece of technology do that for you? What's it cost? How much do you have to spend to maintain it? But it's going back to our roots and what should have been all along, where the customer success manager knows everything there is to know about that customer. And when he calls or she calls, they want to talk to them because the customer knows this is more money for me. And if you're not projecting that, you're playing catch-up ball.
Definitely. I really love this idea of talking the same language and also talking about the language itself. I think it's also not only important of talking with the customer on the same level of the language, but also internally. And Steven has slightly mentioned the metrics, and I have a bit of an operations background, and I'm into numbers. And based in your experience, what do you think? What kind of metrics would you directly take off out of the dashboards internally that don't really make sense to track anymore, and they're just out of, like, I don't know, just for sake of having the numbers?
Get rid of your customer satisfaction numbers and get rid of NPS, because that's not where things are. What you want?
Why is that?
Well, NPS is all about, gee, would you recommend me to someone else? I don't care if they say, yeah, I would recommend you. I want to know if they did it or not. I want to track. When I ran a support department for an operating system and database company, and I had 50 or 60 dealers that sold our product. For example, I knew which ones of those dealers talked to each other. I knew what the communication was amongst that community. I knew that they talked to each other. So if I seeded a story with one of them, I would listen and wait for that story to come back to me from other points. But I knew what they were doing, and I was able to contribute to that. And, were they recommending us? Oh, yeah, they were. That was an important thing. Were they willing? Who knows? Who cares? I want something that I can rely on, and fuzzy numbers don't cut it. Now, that being said, a lot of people, particularly at the board level, think NPS is a great idea. So you're going to have to give them NPS. Keep them happy. If that's what they want, give it to them. But don't be fooled. It's a nothing metric. It doesn't tell you anything useful.
That's brilliant. I really loved it. How you perceive it in terms of tracking how the customers are actually coming back and not tracking the NPS itself.
Yes. Yeah. I want to know on my website, for example, on the CSA website, I have a monitor, and anybody that visits the site, if you're a member and you're logged in, yeah, it tells you your name. That's not all that much use to me. I want to know what you read. And in what order. I would dearly love to know the question that brought you there, but nobody's going to give me that. Google made a policy shift years ago, so they hide that information and you don't get it. But that was having a list of the questions people were asking was a gold mine, and they took it away. And of course, the more and more of my traffic is coming from the AI, and they don't track it. And they aren't going to, even if they had it, they wouldn't tell you. But frankly, I asked them, do you track the questions people ask? They said, no. So I want to know, what did you read? And then what did you do with it? Did you go from this article to that article to this other? That gives me an idea. Okay, that's what this person is interested in. So I can spot the trends. And then, of course, if they click on a link and they go someplace else, I want to know, okay, where did they go? I mean, that's a
super interesting topic. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
That core data is that, when you're in a customer success situation. I mean, when I first encountered SaaS in 2006, I came out of 25 years of consulting with customer support departments on strategy, process, people, and technology. And I looked at that and thought, wow. Number one, it changes the profit realization model. So your profits are not taken up front at the point of sale anymore. They come incrementally. So you can't take the money and run. Because a new customer who doesn't renew after the first year, you haven't recouped your customer acquisition costs. So what looked like a good deal is instantly a dead loss. Too many of those, and your company goes out of business. The other thing I spotted is the software lives on the vendor servers, not behind the customer's firewall, which means I can watch in real time what my customer is doing with my feature set. I know what jobs they're actually accomplishing. I can make an estimate about what those jobs are worth to them. I can watch them. So if their usage keeps going up, things are great. I know what to talk to them about. gee, I noticed you're using this module, but you're not using that one. How's about we turn that on? Let's test that. So I'm in consultant mode. The other one is when their usage goes up and then plateaus and then starts to subside. Red alert, danger. Why are they not using those features anymore? And SaaS gave you that ability to do that. And then I discovered a few years later that a number of companies, major companies, were simply not doing it. And I asked a vice president of engineering, I said, why on earth would you not want to know what your customer is doing? Well, nobody paid me to do that. You want to bang your head on the table going, you idiot.
And I think that's exactly the point, which is all about alignment, right? Because what I saw also over the years is that, especially also product leaders, right? They can kind of show you how much they understood of the overall picture and overall about SaaS and subscription model, about the importance of tying that adoption also to the customer value, right? Because you can have all the features, you can have all the adoption, but you need to make sure that you tie these features also to something, some tangible value, right? And what we at Addressable Value are trying is always aligning these teams around quantifiable value drivers, right? So that you can make sure, does this drive speed or efficiency or economics, or what value does it drive? And maybe speaking about your framework of like strategy, process, people, and technology, how would you say, would you ensure what product builds is actually what sales sells and what CS eventually measures in the end, hopefully with great results?
Oh, absolutely. When you say I'm the customer success guy for an accounting software package, I want to know how many invoices my customer has created, because that tells me something about what it's worth to them. I mean, even if you have to take the very practical method of saying, okay, this customer is paying, so many euros per month for their subscription, and they're using these features. Therefore, we can assign a value to each of those features for the jobs they're producing, and, get the idea of what the actual value is to the customer. And then, of course, we talk to the customer to say, we've put an estimated value on these jobs you're doing, and we've so many euros per incident. Is that accurate for you? Is that the way you look at it? Can we be more, can we zero in on what really works for you? That's a conversation I'd love to have with a customer, because then I'm going to take that back and I'm going to go talk to sales, and I'm going to say, this is what my customers report they're actually doing and where the value is for them. Is that what prospects are asking for? Is that what you're stressing in your sales presentation? I mean, I also described this in terms of being the radar officer for a group of fighter pilots out there. And you say, okay, your target is there. It's moving at this speed. I think it's this kind of an airplane. I want to vector you around so you come up behind him. Your weapon's free, go get him. Now I'm going to vector you to the next one. This is customer success. You tell the marketing, this is what our tier one customers want. So stress that in the marketing. And of course, I always recommend that the customer success people do sales engineering, because that way you are there in the room as sales is making the promises. So you know what was said and you know what the customer asked for. You don't have to rely on sales to tell you in a handoff, because you were there. And the same thing is true with product, because of course, product simply wants, you get engineers that want to build the latest and greatest new trick and all that. Well, okay, that's fine, but that's not what the customers are asking for. It's all got to go back to, this is what the customers use to make money, and we got to give them more of it. So the mere thought of, when their CFO comes in and says, we're spending a lot of money on that software product, and I think we're going to cancel it. No, you can't do that. It would stop my operation if you did that. That's what you want to have happening at the customer site. But you have to build it.
That is definitely making more money. And actually, talking about money, whenever I'm thinking about money, I'm thinking directly about AI. Don't know why, why it is happening. And wanted to shift the conversation a bit to the AI topic and customer success. And you, Michael, also mentioned previously about AI on the website. And right now, artificial intelligence is currently reshaping the customer success tech landscape a lot. And what is one thing that AI does brilliantly for the customer success, and what is the one thing that is absolutely not acceptable for the customer success right now?
Okay, good question. I like this one. First of all, we have to be real. We've got senior managements and boards of directors that think AI is the answer to absolutely anything and everything. That's real. You have to be aware of it, and you have to play in that environment and keep them satisfied. So that's on one side. AI is all this wonderfulness. It can do absolutely anything. Yeah, right. But be aware of that. The truth of it is, AI is really good at what I would call known answer, the simple stuff. I mean, you see it most clearly in support. With any kind of a support department, better than 50% of their incoming cases are about known answers. The answer exists somewhere, the customer just wasn't able to find it. The AI is perfectly situated to handle that. I worked with Apple yesterday, the day before, on an issue, and I got their AI. It was a conversational AI. I asked the question, I was able to phrase it exactly, and the AI came back and answered it. Now, that AI can handle hundreds or thousands of inquiries like that simultaneously. No human can do that. Same thing is true in customer success, where it's a simple question that can be answered very quickly by the AI. Doesn't take any human time to do it, and can handle any number of those questions. All zap, there it is, done. What shouldn't the AI be given access to? Money questions. You want those to go with a human, where you want that human connection to say, okay, looking at your business, I noticed that you're not using, you've asked about this module, but that also tells me you're not using that one. So let's go in, let's dig into that. Let's explore that. You can't do that with an AI. It's not going to have that human quality to it. It's not going to have what I call the voice of experience. The AI is going to be kind of sterile. It's going to give you data, but it's not going to give you the experience as you're talking to it that this person speaks the language of my business fluently. They're good in a machine shop, in other words. So, and
what do you think?
Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah. Well, what would you think then, in contrast to that, right? Also, there's a lot of buzzwords around that, right? So a lot of buzz about like AI, of course, itself is somehow a buzzword, right? That's used here and there. And we talked about the use cases, what AI probably shouldn't do maybe at the moment. What is a buzzword or one of these terms or topics that's constantly discussed where you would think that slowly fades away and we will not talk about that in the future anymore? Something where you would say, this is just noise and this will just slowly disappear?
Well, this may sound a little strange, but the word value, and not that it's going to fade away particularly because it's not useful, because of course it is, but it will tend to fade away because it's not precise enough. It's like a few years ago, the buzzword was customer centricity. Everybody was customer centric, and nobody knew what it meant. I was on a panel once, and everybody else was defining it as, we love our customers really very much. And I said, well, Wharton Business School has a definition of customer centricity, and it's about knowing what your customer is actually doing and wants and selling it to them, and constantly grouping your customers into portfolios of similar needs, and constantly asking yourself, what else can I sell to them profitably? In software companies, too often they think we've got this ultimate killer app. Like, yeah, you've got a killer app, but how long is that going to last? There's no sustainable competitive advantage in features and functions. You can duplicate them too easy. So I look at the value issue, and value is a term, just value, or even customer value. It's too generic. It needs to get down to customer realized value. How many euros are they making this month versus last month versus the next month? Hey, I got an idea. We can increase your profitability by 30%. Let's give it a try. And if you succeed, that customer is going to go off to some professional, conferences. And at the bar, somebody's going to say, we're having a terrible problem with this aspect of our business. And they're going to say, yeah, we did too. And then we worked with XYZ and now our profits are up 30%. You can't buy that advertising. But there's nothing more powerful than that. So I think value is the meaning of value is either going to have to get precise or it's going to have to go away.
I love that you actually brought the whole conversation into the value realization, because that is actually what is also resonating with us a lot. And the question about the value realization, do you think that value realization lays only within the customer success function, or do you think that it spreads across the whole customer journey?
It had better spread across the whole customer journey, because you don't want to leave the customer success teams, holding the ball when they may not have the authority to, if you're going to make me accountable for something, you're going to give me the power to make sure that it happens. And this is where, we circle back to our earlier conversation about the jazz combo. I have to know what the other instruments are doing to produce the overall effect. And the whole thing, if it's not centered on increasing profitability for the customer and doing so on a profitable basis for the company, you're not going in the right direction.
Yeah, indeed. Then another question that came to my mind. So if you had one bet on one emerging role or skill that will define the future of customer success and value management as well, what would that be?
Domain expertise. As it was in the beginning, when we first started this, you have to be able to talk to the customer in their own language, and they have to have the feeling that they're hearing what I would call the voice of authority. And you don't get that from a training course. You don't get that from being trained on the product. You get that from having experience working with the customers and knowing. I mean, when I was consulting, doing customer support operations, which I still do occasionally, but one of the reasons I could walk into a company and talk on all levels was I had been a support rep on the hotline. I knew what it was like to have a screamer on the phone, and I knew what to do to ease that situation and to resolve it. And then I could go to the vice president and say, okay, this is your problem. You think your customers are not handling this kind of call. And down in the trenches, they tell me that's 90% of their work. And I can go to the CEO or to the board and say, okay, a lousy reputation for support is going to make sales much harder for you, because I knew I had been there. Same thing has to happen in customer success. It's the domain expertise. It's the knowing the customer's business and being the trusted advisor. I mean, it sounds simple, and it is, but there's depth to it. You have to know what you're talking about, and you have to have the data and the logic to prove it. And that's going to be more and more important as customers start to turn and focus, not so much on, gee, I've got this package, but in outcomes. What does it actually do? And companies are starting to talk about not pricing on subscriptions, pricing on outcomes. We're not going to charge you a monthly fee. We're going to charge you for how many invoices you created in our accounting package, and get the customer to agree. Yeah, that's what it's worth.
And I like, and it's people who know me know it's also a passion of mine, how you earlier leveraged that fighter jet radar analogy, right? And how you are able to also put that in simple terms, because I always believe that that's something that in business we oftentimes lack, right? And where we overcomplicate and over-engineer things and are not really great at just explaining the simple stuff, right? And what I learned, funnily enough, also having kids, right? So explaining to them the world and trying to simplify things. Similarly, funnily enough, that's also what I learned in the military, where you try to explain the stuff in the most simple terms and an easy step so that 200 people around you understand that in a certain distance, we will all turn left, right? And we make sure that everybody understood that. And in companies, sometimes we have a hard time explaining to 3 people what we expect to do in 2 weeks, right? Which should be also as simple or even as much simpler as that is. And that's why I think this domain expertise, what you also mentioned, that makes it so much easier to do that, because you understand what is required, you understand what needs to be done. And I think this kind of serves this whole idea of being more consultative and grabbing customers by the hand and basically dragging them to success, right? And saying, okay, this is what you should do. This is what good looks like. So let's do more of this. And I think this is something what you and your platform and your community are doing very well in kind of educating folks on that and supporting them in doing that. And before we actually have to come to an end today, which is a shame because I could go on for probably 4 to 6 to 8 hours.
Yes.
Why don't you use like maybe the last section to also advertise this a bit, right? Because you've been doing tremendous things. I already shared. I met you 2 times in London at your events many, many years ago. We've stayed in touch over the years. I'm part of your community. I'm trying to also learn and exchange with you about ideas. We had exchanges about the customer value measurement topic and how important the realization piece is that we also focus on. Why don't you take a minute to tell the folks out there what they can benefit of from your platform, where they can find you, where they can join you, and what's basically the main aspect of your mission?
Where there's 2 places where most of the activity happens now that I'm not doing Customer Success Con anymore, although I've been thinking about bringing it back.
Yes, please.
Yes. Well, the first place is on LinkedIn. It's called the Customer Success Forum. It's got almost 66,000 people in it. I don't look at the numbers in terms of the total number. What I watch week over week is who's active. And there's 2 interesting factors about that. One is okay, so many people actually logged into the forum. And then there's the reading, because it also tells me what the readership is. Now, the forum on LinkedIn is also a public forum, which means something posted in the forum can also turn up in the general feed that's available to anybody on LinkedIn who's interested in customer success. So from time to time, articles will pop up there. You can't comment on them unless you're a member of the forum, but you can see them. One of the things I've tried to do, and there's a long-standing theme that has been difficult for people, and that is the true product is not the technology. That's just the table stakes to get into the game. What you're actually selling is a productivity and profitability relationship over time. And that's really hard and scary for people, because we've known how to sell technology for 70 years. But knowing how to sell and maintain a mutually profitable relationship, that's something people struggle with quite a bit. So what I'll do is the other part of the association is the Customer Success Association website, customersuccessassociation.com, very simple. I have a library of resources for people. I have a directory of links to consultants and technology and recruiters and outsourcers and fractional CSE or CSM people. Anything and everything people might be looking for, that's the go-to place. And those pages are really hit hard every day. How do I do this? Because that's the essential message, to say, okay, first of all, you're not alone. Everybody else is struggling with the same ideas and the same challenges. I know you think that you're way behind the game, that everybody else is doing it so much better than you are. No, not true. You're all struggling with the same things. Some of you admit it, others don't. but you're all struggling with the same things. So here's the resources. Look for library, look for the blog I do there called Customer Success Central. For this is what others have been. There's case studies. This is a problem I faced. This is how I perceived it. This is what I did about it, and here's the results. And when I find somebody on LinkedIn or someplace else that said, "Oh man, did we have a win? We did this and it worked great," I say, "How about let's do a case study on that, so that that's available for you." So people hit the case studies page and they go through and they read every last case study that's on there, looking for answers and looking for that sense of reassurance. Hey, maybe I'm not doing it so bad after all. I was already doing that. So that's kind of that's the fun stuff for me. I do miss Customer Success Con because getting down for an afternoon with a bunch of people and then talking through half the night afterwards about the state of the world and how we can solve all the world's problems, fueled by a good amount of wine and beer. That was perfect, and I hope to get back to that.
And I think you have two people who would already directly sign up to join you there. So Maria, I think you would agree that we would be right there with him, right?
I'd be definitely in.
Well, maybe as we get farther into this shift to solid value for the customer, then let's get together for a discussion, similar as we've done today. And here's how you actually do that. Here's the metrics. Here's the technology. One thing that scares me is I'm afraid the technology still isn't there to do that. I ran into somebody that told me, yes, we have the ability to track specific feature usage in our product. Product owns it and they won't give it to me. Won't give it to you. Can I come consulting with your firm so I can walk into the board and say, why are you hamstringing your customer success department by not giving them the access to the data they need?
Yeah.
Because you've got to know.
So true.
You can't rely on the customer to tell you everything, because they might not ask the right questions or they might not have the access to the data themselves. You got to work with them going, this is the data we need. How are we going to get it?
Perfect. Michael, it's been such a great pleasure. So I think we need to do a part 2 of this to just get all the conversations and all the topics in here that we would like to discuss. So it was an amazing fun, and maybe we should already secure, realizationcon.com or something like that to make sure that we can get that into the book. So it was a great pleasure having you, Michael. So we will make sure that we maybe get a second episode of this into the books to get all these questions solved. So thank you so much. We will hope to have you back soon. We will support you where we can to get another event going. So maybe we find a middle ground somewhere between where you live. I think it's the Boston area, right?
No, I'm north of San Francisco in California.
San Francisco. Sorry, I think I got that wrong last time as well, right? So
that's all right. Generally, I did Customer Success Con in London, but there's no reason why we couldn't move farther east. And go, oh darn, I could go to Paris or even Berlin.
Let's
it's
do
been
Paris.
Many years since I've been in Berlin.
Sounds great. Let's get that into the book. So thank you so much. And we have to come to an end. So thank you for joining us today. And we have to wrap this up today. So I want to thank you, Michael, especially for joining us today, sharing your insights in measuring and scaling sustainable customer value. To our audience, thank you for joining in. Thank you for being part of this today. And you can find the show and the notes and the links, everything in the show description. We will also share some links afterwards and where you can find the sources and content of the Customer Success Association. And Maria, thank you so much for joining today's episode. It was a great pleasure to have you on as well. So everybody out there, expect to see more of Maria soon. So especially on the moderation and the podcast part. So thank you for joining me today as well. And we have to wrap up now. So thank you for joining in. Remember, the journey never ends to customer value and beyond, and be with us next time. Bye-bye.